unfollow the 49ers. What do we know about Aiyuk's desire to stay in San Fran?
Well, I think his desire to get paid is greater than his desire to stay in San Francisco, wherever that is. And so I think ultimately Brandon Aiyuk wants to get paid. He'd like it to be in San Francisco, but if not, whoever wants to pay him.
And it's shit like that that lets you know draft season is upon us. Had to jump on here. Two things I wanted to talk about. One, the continuation of the speculation of Brandon Aiyuk. He's going to be traded. He's not. Does he want to be in San Francisco? Does he not? Clips like that you just heard with the lead-on segments, it's just getting absolutely ridiculous. And then also, former 49ers, recently retired, Logan Ryan, did a little media tour. And he said some interesting things that I believe are worth listening to about Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan, and the one and only Brandon Aiyuk. So with that being said, let's get into it, y'all. Yo, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Ryan Tigey, back in action. I've been seeing a lot of news continuing to heat up about Brandon Aiyuk. One thing I'll just say right off the jump, as I've said in my other videos, how good of a receiver is, the Niners want Brandon Aiyuk. I think there's a high probability Brandon Aiyuk is going to remain on the 49ers. But there's even now, in quotes, 49er pundits like Grant who are saying Steelers beat writers are reporting from sources within the organization that no deal has been made, but that they will be shocked if Brandon Aiyuk is not traded to the Steelers. I'm going to play a clip from Bill Belichick, who was recently on the Pat McAfee show. Let's take a listen to what Bill Belichick had to say about the noise coming out around the draft and who that noise comes from.
And now this last week, 10 days or so, is where you really sit as an organization and sort through it and sift it out. And there's always a little bit of contradiction, but you got to figure out where you're gonna, where you're gonna place your chips, what you're gonna believe, what you're not gonna believe. And I'd say the biggest newsmakers here quietly are the agents. A lot of the information I think that comes to the media about who's going to draft who, how high they're going to go. Is a lot of media driven. So, when the agent hears, well, my player could go anywhere from, the second or the third round, you add one to that and say, well, these GMs or these teams are talking about taking my guy in the first round. I've never done that. I've never told an agent, hey, we're going to take your guy in this round. We're going to take your guy with this, with the 27th pick or the 31st pick or whatever pick it is we have. I don't think there's too many teams that do that, but I think the agents will say, hey, my guy's going to go at 31 to this team. My guy's going to go at 17 to that team, that type of thing. And then that just generates interest in their players. So
I think a lot of this information, whether it's from an agent who represents someone on the Steelers or Brandon Aiyuk's agent, nonetheless, I think a lot of this is getting drummed up from people with outside the organization. And again, I stand true to what I said. I think there's a minimum of a 90% chance Brandon Aiyuk remains on the Niners. Another thing, as I'm sure many of you guys heard, it was voluntary offseason workouts. Prior players on the 49ers who were in the middle of contract negotiations, i.e. Deebo Samuel, i.e. Nick Bosa, they did not show up to those. They didn't even show up to mandatory, and definitely Bosa didn't even show up to mandatory training camp until he got a deal got done, which makes sense. All of it makes sense. And for BA to show up when all these fans out there are saying he's so disgruntled, it's just an absolute joke. And that's clearly not the case, because if he was so disgruntled, and yes, did he unfollow the 49ers? He did. Does that matter? Absolutely not. Is anyone in the organization freaking out about that? Absolutely not. May I remind you, Ryan Williams, the agent of Brandon Aiyuk, is best friends with John Lynch. Like, Ryan Williams was at John Lynch's NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame induction. So that's the type of shit they're on. They were in each other's weddings. That's the type of boys that they are. So I think a lot of it is just pure speculation, people trying to drum up shit because there's not a whole lot to talk about right now. And Brandon Aiyuk is a stud receiver any team would want to have play for them. And so people are just guessing. And it's desperate organizations like the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who do the Pittsburgh Steelers have? They've been known for their defense through their entire organization, except for the sliver of time where Ben Roethlisberger was thrown to AB. And they've had some other weapons, not saying all that, but nonetheless, they're a defensive organization. And they are a wide receiver needy organization. I will claim this and say it with the utmost confidence. Brandon Aiyuk, if the slight chance he was traded, it would happen before the draft, but if he was traded, the Niners would not accept anything less than a first-round pick. So the speculation about, they may get a 2 and a 3 or whatever it is, if there's not a 1 at the very front of it, the deal's not going to happen. There is no way. But the Steelers are a wide receiver needy team. On to topic 2, which is what I really wanted to talk about. So Logan Ryan was recently on a little media tour, and he announced his retirement, and he appeared on The Herd, Colin Cowherd's show. And he got asked a question about how is it playing for Kyle. And here's what he had to say.
So you had Kyle Shanahan this year, albeit briefly. Is the culture, because that's a physical culture, and he's an offensive coach.
Yeah.
What was the difference between a New England culture with a great defensive coach and San Francisco with kind of a legendary offensive coach?
I think they're very similar. I think Kyle reminds me of Bill the most of any other coach. And I played with Vrabel as well, and Vrabel did a lot of things like Bill. But I think Kyle's ability to make the offense, as complicated as it is, as many plays they have, simple for these guys to get the playmakers the ball in space. And really the key to San Francisco is like, I'm going to scheme up ways to get all these guys that we drafted space with the ball. And I teach them to be physical runners. No one in San Francisco ever runs out of bounds. You'll never see them run out of bounds. They always cut back. You have to hit them to run out of bounds. They finish runs. They get so much hitting yardage, extra 2 yards, extra 3 yards. Kyle says, I treat second down like third down because if you get a first down on second down, that is a third down. I don't want 3rd and 1. Finish the run going forward, right? So his physicality of approach is what Bill was doing for our team. Patriots teams were physical teams. The 49ers is a physical team. He's doing it with the runners of the football. And I think he does that very simply for all these guys to highlight their strengths. Another thing both coaches do well, they take their players, they draft them, and they use their strengths generally pretty well. They don't say, Deebo's not a traditional X receiver. He's not going to work here. They're going to work the offense to work for Deebo. They're going to work the offense to work with Jennings. And also, if you're a young player, watch how those receivers block.
Yeah.
Which is why I think Ayuk's worth all the money, because he's a great route runner. He's great before the catch, out of the catch. But go watch him block 70 yards downfield. I don't see other receivers doing that.
Hey, by the way, Brandon Aiyuk, you guys make fun of me when I say top 5 receiver. He may not be Justin Jefferson over the top. That kid is and he fits their culture.
Kyle reminds him of Bill. And you have to remember, he's won Super Bowl with the Patriots. So he intimately knows, obviously, both coaches, even though he did a much shorter stint with the 49ers. But nonetheless, I just think that's super interesting to hear that Kyle, as we kind of heard other players mention throughout over the years about how Kyle can simplify a very complex offense.
It's sole right coin, Fox, toss 18 triple, Canada with Larry, stay, why shallow?
With the sole purpose of it being taking advantage of his player strength and getting his dogs in space with the ball. So I think that makes it extremely unique. I know a lot of coaches say they like to, I think it was more of an old school thing, like, hey, you come into my offense, you adjust to my offense. Whereas Kyle was the front runner of the new school of saying, hey, these are the pieces I got to work with. I'm going to build an offense that works best for them. And yes, it has worked without question. So I thought that was interesting to hear that just from a guy, obviously inside the building. And I also found that very interesting I never thought about that, but it's very true that you never really see the 49ers run out of bounds. Obviously, as a fan, we know they're known in the NFL, across the league. They're a physical, dominant team. They punch you in the mouth. And hearing Logan Ryan talk about that, I never even really noticed it. And so I thought that was something that was pretty cool to hear. And now something we can on the lookout for. Watching Deebo, B.A., Kittle, Juice, Purdy, CMC, Mitchell, you name it, just all the dogs fucking hit stick people. So that was something super cool. And then the next clip I heard of Logan Ryan on this media tour, he was on Keyshawn Johnson YouTube show, kind of a playoff of words of what Robert Sala's infamous all gas, no brakes slogan was. Well, his is all facts, no breaks. Not that clever, but Keyshawn Johnson is obviously a legend in the league. So let's hear what Logan Ryan had to say on Keyshawn Johnson's show as it relates to Brock Purdy, QB1. Let's take a listen.
But you just recently played with Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
Be honest with me, though. I ain't going to get you in trouble. I just want to know. Is he here to stay? Or is everybody still waiting for the shoe to drop and him to turn back into a pumpkin?
Nah, he's here to stay. I think they're going to give him a bag, too.
No, for sure they're going to give him a bag. They're going to have to.
Big bag.
Yeah, nah, he's going to be like one of the highest paid. People are going to be shocked. Like, what? He's going to be talking about that forever. But, nah, he's here to stay. Shanahan loves him. Like, true. Like, I got there a week or so before we played Baltimore on Christmas. Remember that game? And he threw 4 picks.
Yeah.
And a lot of those picks were tip balls. You know, I mean, they're interceptions. You can't do that. Yeah, it was just a bad day.
I always discount
it was a bad
quarterbacks
day.
in interceptions.
You know?
If somebody throws 15,
he had a
really
corner
threw
blitz.
7.
He went to throw it. One corner tipped up to the other corner. Like,
Yeah.
well, that was crazy. So it's just a bad day. You know, a bad day at work. He didn't play great, but like he had 3 picks or whatever in the first half or third quarter. He's in the fourth quarter, still stepping in, still slinging it, like still trying to throw the ball, trying to win a game. And Shanahan said, I remember in the meeting, he's like, I've coached a lot of quarterbacks. When quarterbacks have 3 or 4 interceptions, they're trying to check it down, protect, get out of there, get out of Dodge, not trying to take no more hits. He still stayed like kind of in his progression, but kind of had this gunfire about him, this dog about him. And he always would ask me questions about Brady and stuff like that. And in the playoffs, I think you saw like, the 49ers were a team that's used to playing ahead. In the playoffs, we got behind a bunch. And Purdy was coming in the second half, going to get it, making plays happen with his feet, with his arm. He's got this dog ability about him on top of the processing. I think he processes like a Kirk Cousins. But he also has this dog in him, though, that I don't think people fully see, but he does it to win games over there.
Which one of the receivers in San Francisco is harder to defend? Aiyuk or Jennings or Deebo?
We had Demo on the podcast before the Super Bowl, and he said it was Aiyuk, Diabador Lenore.
Yeah. It's Aiyuk. Because his route running is definitely the best of the 3. Like, he's crispy, fast, electric. But, like, all 3 of them, like, what Deebo does with the ball after he gets it is just special. That's world-class special. And what Jennings does, boy, them blocking, like, the reason why Aiyuk deserves to get paid is because of route running and all that stuff. Like Keenan Allen-ish, a little more speed. But, dude, this dude's blocking, too. Blocking. Like, I like playing number of receivers that don't block. That's the easy day for me that don't block, right? I can tell if it's runner pass. They subbing out every 2 plays. I'm like, all right, they ain't getting the ball. The ball ain't coming this way. They don't bring a backup receiver in to go catch a pass on one play. They're running the ball. Aiyuk staying in the whole game.
Yeah.
And he's blocking dudes 70 yards downfield. And he's blocking guys to the Gatorade cooler with Jennings and Deebo. So those guys are asked to block, and he's also running high-quality routes and catching the ball when he's targeted. So I think all that's a guy that I would pay because he plays the position every single down.
So again, some interesting takeaways from that as well. Obviously, I think a lot of people can see Kyle has a deep found respect for Purdy. He loves Purdy, but it obviously means more when it comes from a player who was inside the building, let alone a veteran who'd been on multiple teams. He understands the dynamic between the head coach, play caller, and quarterback. And hearing him say that, I think just solidifies it. And if anybody out there was thinking Brock may get a little bit less than what top-tier quarterbacks are getting, think again. Because if he balls out like he's been consistently doing, and we have no reason to think otherwise, Brock Purdy is about to be a very rich man and get fucking paid. Like, potentially $50 million a year paid, which is going to cause a domino effect and a lot of changes are going to occur. But I have seen some people out there talking about, like, because Brock Purdy isn't talked about as a Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, those types of players, that somehow the Niners are going to be able to negotiate less and Brock will just agree to taking less. Hearing what Logan Ryan just had to say about Brock Purdy, no shot. So expect some things to change following this next upcoming season when the Brock Purdy rookie deal is expired and that boy going to take home some moolah. And you got to think about with all the rumors and how Kyle Shanahan said he was going to pick up Kirk Cousins before they got Jimmy G, how Logan Ryan chose to use Kirk Cousins as the example, which I found interesting. that he processes like Kirk Cousins. So that literally is a match made in heaven for Kyle Shanahan. He's got the gunslinger. He's got the dog mentality. He fucking wants to win football games. Oh, and he can process like one of Kyle's favorite quarterbacks ever, Kirk Cousins. So interesting takeaway from that. And then also the final component of that, just Brandon Aiyuk, the route runner, and then Deebo with the ball in space. Stuff that we already know, but again, good to hear from someone inside the building and someone who plays against those guys. He's been on opposing teams that have played the 49ers, and then, of course, he came on to the 49ers for that last leg of the Super Bowl run last season. So I'll wrap up with this. Just thought that would be some interesting clips of information to hear just so we can all remember. Again, draft season is upon us. A lot of bullshit, a lot of fake shit that comes out from sources, and nobody really knows unless you're Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, and even then they might not even know yet because they haven't been presented anything that would actually get them to make a move. Nobody knows. That's the bottom line, and that's the point of it. This always happens every year in draft season. I always have to remind myself every year during draft season when all the news starts coming out, all these crazy takes and people with insiders. It is what it is. It gives people something to talk about, but at the same token, I wouldn't worry about it too much. And when they know that with the Brock Purdy contract looming, this is their last definitive shot with their core group of guys to finally get over that hump and win a Super Bowl. Is it worth it to them to move on from BA and take a cheaper contract, but also an unproven player? I don't think so. They know that. And that's what makes me feel all good about all this. I'll be back. I have another video coming up here shortly. I'm finishing up the editing on all of it about why this might be the last hurrah, which goes into a lot more detail about the players, the personnel, everything. Obviously, the biggest component being Brock Purdy rookie contract playing a major factor in all that. So I'll be back. Draft is next week. Looking forward to see who the Niners pick. Excited that we actually have our first rounder, so we can all actually watch the first round versus not really giving a fuck. So until then, I'll be back. Like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. Hit me up. Hey.